The sky was dark with smoke. Fires burned across the land. Metal pieces and broken machines were everywhere. The sound of war had stopped, but the silence was heavy. The battlefield was full of dust, fallen soldiers, and crushed dreams. Zara lay behind a large rock, holding her arm. Her skin was blue and her hair silver, the color of her people. She was breathing hard. Blood ran from her shoulder. The pain was sharp, but not as sharp as the fear inside her. She was an alien, a scout from the planet Nelor. Her mission had failed. Her ship was shot down. She had run through the battlefield, trying to find shelter. Now, she was trapped. No weapons, no energy, no way to call for help. She heard footsteps. They were slow and heavy. Not like her people's steps. These were boots, human boots. Her heart beat faster. She held her breath and closed her eyes. She knew what humans did to captured aliens. Her commanders had warned her. They said humans had no mercy. She peeked over the rock. A human soldier was walking toward her. He wore a helmet and armor. His face had dirt and dry blood. He looked tired, but strong. In his hand was a bag. Zara's body froze. She could not run. Her arm hurt too much. Her legs were weak. She pressed her back against the rock and waited. For the end. The soldier came closer. He stopped in front of her. Zara looked up, ready for anything. Her hands were open. Her eyes were full of fear. But the soldier didn't raise a weapon. He knelt down slowly. His voice was soft. "It's okay," he said, though she could not understand the words. He opened the bag and took out a small box. Inside were bandages and a water bottle. Zara blinked. Was this a trick? The soldier reached out with the bottle and gently poured water on her wound. She flinched. The water stung but cleaned the blood. Then he pulled out a white cloth and wrapped it around her shoulder. Zara looked at him with wide eyes. The human said nothing. He worked carefully, like someone fixing something broken. She didn't understand. Why would he help her? She was the enemy. He finished tying the bandage and sat back. His breathing was slow. He wiped his face with his hand and looked up at the sky. Then he looked at her again. Zara slowly raised her hand and touched the bandage. It was clean and tight. The bleeding had stopped. The human pointed to himself. "Tom," he said. She didn't answer. He smiled a little and pointed to her. Zara hesitated. Then she whispered, "Zara." Tom nodded. They sat in silence. The sounds of war were far away now. A bird flew across the sky. The wind moved the smoke slowly away. Zara stared at the human soldier. She still didn't trust him. But he had not hurt her. He had helped her. She had to accept that. She pointed to his arm. There was a cut there. Tom looked down and shrugged. He opened the bag again and took out another cloth. He handed it to her. Zara took it slowly and cleaned the cut on his arm. It was small but deep. She used what he had used on her. Tom smiled again. A soft smile. Not fake. Not cold. They were still enemies. But something had changed. The war was still outside. The pain was still in their hearts. But in this small moment, something good had happened. Zara looked at the bandage on her arm again. It was strange. A human had saved her. She had been told humans were cruel, that they destroyed everything. But Tom had not destroyed her. He had saved her. The sun was low in the sky now. Orange light spread across the broken land. Tom stood up and looked around. He offered his hand to her. Zara looked at the hand for a long time. Then she reached out and took it. He helped her stand. They did not speak. They did not need to. A human and an alien. Not fighting. Not killing. Just walking together through a land that had seen too much war. It was only one step. But it was a step towards something better. Zara opened her eyes slowly. She was lying on a soft bed, covered with a light blanket. The ceiling above her was metal. The walls were silver gray. It was not a nut or room. It was human. Her body tensed. She sat up quickly, but pain shot through her shoulder. She winced and grabbed the bandage. Memories returned. The battlefield, the pain, the human soldier named Tom. Zara looked around. She was in a small room with one door and no windows. A table was beside her bed. On it were a glass of water, a bowl of food, and a folded cloth. She reached for the glass and drank slowly. The water was clean. She hadn't tasted anything like it since the crash. Then the door opened. Zara froze again. A human walked in. It was Tom. He looked surprised to see her awake. He smiled gently and nodded. He carried another tray with fresh bandages and some fruit. Zara's heart beat fast. But she didn't move away. Tom came closer and placed the tray on the table. Then he pointed to her bandage and made a motion with his hands. He wanted to check her wound. Zara watched him closely. He was calm. He moved slowly, showing her he meant no harm. She gave a small nod. Tom sat beside her and removed the old bandage. Her wound looked better. The bleeding had stopped, and the skin was closing. He cleaned it again, this time with warm water. His hands were steady and kind. Zara did not understand why. She had been raised to hate humans. Her people said humans took planets and burned homes. They said humans never showed mercy. But this one had saved her life. Tom finished the new bandage and sat back. He looked tired but peaceful. Zara pointed to him, then to the bandage, then placed her hand on her chest. She was trying to say thank you. Tom smiled again and nodded. There was silence. Then he pointed to himself again. Tom, he said. Zara remembered. She touched her chest. Zara. He nodded. They had done this before, but now it felt different. He picked up the bowl of food and handed it to her. Zara smelled it. It was simple warm grains and small pieces of cooked roots. She took a bite and was surprised. It tasted plain, but good. Tom sat nearby and watched her eat. He didn't speak. He just waited. After she finished, he stood up and opened the door. 2 other human soldiers stood outside. They stared at Zara with hard eyes. One of them asked Tom something in a firm voice. Zara couldn't understand the words, but she felt the tension. Tom answered calmly, then closed the door again. Zara looked at him with worry. Tom sat down and drew something in the air with his finger. He made a circle, then tapped his chest and hers. Then he made a motion like a shield. Zara tried to guess what it meant. She pointed to the door. Then she crossed her arms and raised her eyes. Tom nodded slowly. He looked down, then up at her again. He tapped his chest. Zara understood only one thing. Tom was protecting her, even from his own people. Her mind was full of questions. Why would a soldier risk his safety for her? Did he really believe she was not his enemy? Could it be possible that not all humans were cruel? Tom pulled a small tablet from his bag. On it were pictures. He showed her an image of green hills, a blue sky, and a house. There were people in the photo, humans of different ages. Zara pointed to one of the smaller ones, a child with red hair. Tom smiled and touched the image. He made a sign like a cradle with his arms. Zara nodded slowly. Family. Tom turned the tablet and drew a picture using his finger. It was a rough image, but she saw it clearly. 2 figures, 1 human and 1 alien standing under the same sky. Zara looked at the drawing for a long time. It touched something deep inside her. Her people had fought humans for many years. There was always fear and anger. But in this small room, there was something else. Kindness, understanding, peace. Tom stood up and pointed to the door, then to the hallway, then back to her. He was asking if she wanted to walk a little. Zara hesitated, then nodded. He helped her up. She felt weak but strong enough to stand. They walked slowly down a short hallway. Human soldiers watched her with sharp eyes. One of them whispered something, but Tom kept walking. His hand was near Zara's back, like a guard. She looked around. The base was small, made of metal and strong walls. Humans moved around, fixing machines, carrying tools, and washing screens. They looked tired, just like her people during war. Tom took her to a corner where a window showed the outside. There were trees and a river. The sun was low in the sky. Zara stood still. It was beautiful. She didn't expect beauty here. Tom stood beside her and looked at the sky. He said something, but she didn't understand. Still, his voice was calm, not angry. They stayed there for a while. To enemies not fighting, just watching the same sky, Zara knew something had changed inside her. She didn't know what the next day would bring, but she no longer saw Tom as just a human soldier. She saw him as something more, someone who chose to bandage a wound instead of causing one. The night was cold outside the human camp. Inside, small fires burned in metal barrels to keep the place warm. Soldiers sat in groups, talking in low voices or resting with closed eyes. The air smelled of smoke and metal. Tom sat near one of the fires. He held a flat metal plate with some bread and dried meat. He was quiet, his eyes watching the flame dance. Across from him sat Zara. She had a blanket around her shoulders and a hot drink in her hands. She still felt strange in the camp, but something about the fire made her feel calm. For a long time, they didn't speak. Zara watched the flames, thinking of her home, the bright forest of Nelor, the sound of singing birds, the warm wind in the trees. She missed it all. Tom took something from his pocket. It was a small plastic square. He pressed a button, and a picture appeared on the screen. He turned it and showed it to Zara. The photo showed a human family, a woman, an old man, and two children. One of the children had red hair and a wide smile. Zara leaned closer. Her eyes studied the image. She pointed to the small boy and looked at Tom with a question on her face. Tom nodded. He drew a circle in the air with his finger, then pointed to himself and the boy. Zara understood. Family. She smiled a little. Tom reached into his bag and pulled out a small notebook and a pencil. He handed it to Zara. Zara looked at it for a moment, then took the pencil and began to draw. First, she drew a tall tree with large leaves, then a small house made of white stone. Next to the house, she drew two figures. One of them was smaller, like a child. She showed it to Tom. He pointed to the smaller figure. You? He asked. Zara nodded slowly. Tom tapped his chest. Sister, he asked. Zara's smile faded. She looked down. Her hand held the pencil tightly. She pointed to the child and drew a small star above the head. Tom understood. She had lost someone too. He gently took the notebook and turned the page. This time, he drew a simple picture, a human and an alien, sitting near a fire. Between them was a heart. He showed it to Zara. Zara looked at it and then at him. She did not smile this time, but her eyes were not sad. Tom reached into his bag again and took out another item. It was a small music player. He pressed a button and soft music began to play. The sound was slow and gentle, like wind moving through leaves. Zara had never heard human music before. She tilted her head and closed her eyes, listening. It was peaceful. Not like the war sound she was used to. Tom tapped the ground, asking her to stay. Then he left the fire for a moment and returned with 2 cups of warm soup. He handed one to Zara. She held it with both hands. The warmth helped her feel less alone. For the first time since she crashed, she felt safe. Tom sat close, but not too close. He knew she still needed space. Zara looked at him and pointed to the stars in the sky. She said softly, Nelor. Tom looked up. Earth, he said. She repeated, Earth. He nodded and pointed again. Nelor. Zara smiled. She was teaching him, and he was teaching her. They spent the next hour sharing simple words: tree, fire, sky, water. Friend. Tom repeated each word in his language, and Zara repeated in hers. They laughed when they made mistakes and helped each other try again. Bond was forming, stronger than language, stronger than fear. Zara looked into the fire and thought of all the things she had believed about humans. She was told they were only destroyers, only takers. But this one had given her food, shelter, safety, and now even music. He had not taken anything from her. He had given more than she expected. The fire cracked softly. The stars were clear above the camp. Other soldiers still watched from far away, unsure of what to think, but none of them came close. They saw Tom sitting with the alien girl and chose to stay back. Zara leaned against a piece of wood near the fire. Her eyes grew heavy. The heat, the food, the quiet sounds, they all pulled her toward sleep. Tom noticed. He picked up the blanket. that had slipped from her shoulders and placed it gently over her. Zara looked at him once more. "Tom," she said. He turned and gave a small smile. "Zara." She nodded, then closed her eyes. The human soldier stayed beside her, keeping watch. Through the night, not as an enemy, but as a protector, as a friend. The sound of shouting woke Zara from her sleep. She sat up quickly and looked around. The fire had burned low, and the camp was filled with noise. Boots hit the ground fast. Lights flashed. Soldiers ran from one side to another. Tom appeared beside her and held up his hand. "Stay here," he said, then moved toward the camp gate. Zara's heart began to race. Something was wrong. She stood up slowly, her body still weak. She moved behind a metal wall and watched the humans dot. An alarm rang. Then the sound of explosions broke the air. Zara looked up and saw ships in the sky. They were not human ships. They were from Nelor. Her people had found the base. One of the ships fired a blast at the ground, shaking everything. Zara fell down and covered her head. The earth trembled. Dust filled the air. Soldiers shouted. Some fired at the sky. Others ran for cover. Zara stood again and tried to move toward the edge of the camp. But someone grabbed her arm. It was a human officer. His face was hard, and his eyes were full of anger. He looked at her, then pulled out his weapon. Zara gasped. Tom ran in from the side. "Stop," he shouted, placing himself between the officer and Zara. The officer said something in a loud voice and pointed at Zara. Tom shook his head and stood firm. The officer pushed him aside and raised his weapon again. Zara's heart dropped. She couldn't move. Her legs were frozen. Tom grabbed the officer's arm and pulled it away. The two men struggled for a moment. Other soldiers came running. They shouted, but no one fired. Then the base shook again. A second blasted nearby. The officer fell, and Tom pulled Zara behind a wall. "Come with me," he said quickly, motioning toward a side gate. Zara followed him without question. They ran through smoke and fire. Tom led her past broken machines and fallen crates. The camp was falling apart. They reached the back gate. It was half open. Beyond it was the forest. Zara looked back once. The camp that had felt like safety now burned behind her. Some humans still fought. Others tried to escape. Tom placed his hand on her shoulder. "We can't stay," he said. She nodded, and they entered the forest. The trees were tall and thick. The air was cooler. The sound of blasts faded behind them. They walked quickly, staying low. Zara's arm hurt again, but she didn't stop. Tom checked his small map device. "We need to move west," he said, pointing to a ridge. Zara looked around. She recognized the land. She knew this area from her earlier maps. "There's a cave," she said softly. "Not far." Tom didn't understand her words, but he saw her point to the hills. He nodded, trusting her. They walked for an hour. The forest grew darker as night came. Birds flew from trees. Small animals ran between the roots. Finally, they reached a rocky area. Zara pointed to a narrow path. They climbed it slowly, helping each other. At the top was the cave. It was small but dry. The roof was strong, and the back was deep enough to hide. Tom looked around and gave a short breath of relief. "This will work," he said. Zara sat near the wall and took off her shoes. Her feet were sore. Tom gave her a small bottle of water. She drank and handed it back. They sat in silence again. The danger was not over, but for now, they were safe. Tom opened his bag and took out a blanket. He handed it to her and sat near the entrance with his weapon on his lap. Zara watched him. He had risked everything back in the camp. He had stood in front of his own people to protect her. She didn't know why he cared so much, but she was thankful. She crawled closer and sat beside him. He looked surprised but didn't move away. Outside, the stars shone above the trees. Zara pointed to the sky. "Nelor," she said. Tom looked to Earth, he said. She looked at him. "No war," she said softly. He turned to her. "No war," he repeated. Zara leaned her head against the wall and closed her eyes. She remembered when the war began. Her people were afraid. The humans were new, loud, strong. But now, Sitting next to Tom, she wondered if fear had made them blind. Not all humans were cruel. Tom had shown her another side. He had offered help when she was hurt. He had protected her from his own. He had led her to safety. He had become her friend inside the cave. The silence felt peaceful. No shouting. No weapons. Just two souls from different worlds, sitting close, sharing warmth. The fire of war still burned in the world, but in this small space, there was no hate, only quiet understanding. The morning light touched the edge of the cave. Thin rays passed through the rocks, lighting up the dust in the air. Birds sang in the forest outside, for the first time in days. The world seemed quiet. Zara opened her eyes and stretched her legs. Her body still ached, but the pain had become dull. She turned and saw Tom sitting near the entrance, watching the trees. He looked tired but alert. His hand rested on his weapon, but his face was calm. She walked over and sat beside him. Tom gave a small smile and handed her a fruit he had picked earlier. It was round and red, with soft skin. Zara sniffed it, then took a bite. It was sweet and juicy. Tom pointed at the forest path. "We should move soon," he said. Zara nodded. "I know a safe place," she replied slowly. Tom didn't understand all the words, but he could tell what she meant. He trusted her. They packed what little they had and left the cave. Zara led the way, walking with care. The path was narrow and rocky. Trees grew close together, their roots twisting through the ground. The forest felt alive. Every step brought a new sound: leaves moving, insects buzzing, branches cracking in the wind. Zara paused often to check the direction. She remembered these lands from training. There was a hidden valley nearby, far from both human and Nil or patrols. As they moved, the path became steeper. Rocks rolled under their feet. Zara climbed first, reaching out for strong branches. Suddenly, the ground beneath Tom gave way. He slipped and fell down a short slope. His leg hit a stone, and he groaned in pain. Zara rushed back. "Are you okay?" she asked, kneeling beside him. Tom gritted his teeth. He tried to stand but couldn't put weight on his leg. Zara looked around. She tore a long piece from her tunic and wrapped it around his leg tightly. Then she took a thick branch and helped him stand, using it as a walking stick. Tom looked at her and gave a thankful nod. "Good job," he said. They moved slower now. Zara supported him when the slope became too sharp. He didn't complain. He trusted her steps and followed her guidance. By afternoon, they reached the edge of a valley. It was wide, filled with soft grass and tall trees. A small river ran through the middle, clean and clear. Zara smiled. "We are close," she said. They walked down into the valley and found a small shelter made from stone and leaves. It was an old Nell or resting point, built during earlier missions. Zara checked the area. No signs of danger. Tom sat near the river and washed his face. The cool water helped him relax. Zara filled a small container and brought it to him. They sat under a large tree and rested. After a while, Zara took a stick and began to draw on the ground. She drew a human ship and an alien ship. Then she drew two hands reaching toward each other. Tom watched her closely. He picked up another stick and added a bridge between the hands. Zara looked at it and nodded. "Bridge," she said. Tom repeated. "Bridge." Zara touched her chest. "Trust." Tom smiled and said the same word. Trust. That one word meant more than many sentences. As the sun went down, they started a small fire. Zara roasted some roots she had found. Tom added pieces of dry meat from his bag. They shared the food. Zara asked slowly, "Why did you save me?" Tom looked into the fire. He was quiet for a while. Then he said, "I lost someone. A little girl. My sister's child. She died in the early days of the war." Zara listened, not speaking. Tom continued, "She was innocent, just a child. But war doesn't care. I don't want more children to die. I don't want more hate." Zara nodded. "I lost my brother. He was kind. He believed we could live together. He died too." They sat in silence again, both thinking of lost faces and broken homes. Tom said, "Maybe this war will never stop. But if we show others what is possible, maybe one day it can." Zara looked at him. Her eyes were full of hope and pain. She reached out and touched his hand. Tom didn't move away. The fire crackled softly. The stars came out, bright and clear above the valley. Two people from two different worlds sitting under the same sky sharing food, stories. And something deeper. They didn't need many words. Their actions were enough. The next day would bring new challenges. The war was still out there. But in that moment, a human and an alien had built something stronger than fear. They had built a bridge of trust. The sun rose slowly over the quiet valley. A soft breeze passed through the trees, carrying the smell of wet grass and river water. Zara stood near the stream, washing her hands and face. She looked up at the sky. Somewhere beyond those clouds, her people were still fighting. Somewhere, the war was still burning. Tom sat on a rock nearby, checking his injured leg. The swelling had gone down, but he still needed help walking. He looked up when Zara returned and gave a small nod. Zara sat beside him and opened a small metal device from her belt. It was round and silver, with a green light blinking slowly. Tom leaned closer. "What is that?" he asked. Zara smiled a little. "It's a signal stone," she said. "I can send a short message. My people will hear it." Tom looked serious. "Will they come?" Zara nodded. "Yes, but only if they trust the message." Tom thought for a moment. "Will they trust me?" Zara looked into his eyes. "I will tell them the truth." Tom said, "Then I will send a message to my side. Maybe someone will listen." Zara helped him sit under a tree while she worked on her signal. She typed a short message in her language. "I am alive. A human saved me. He is not the enemy. We want to talk." She sent it, then held the stone close. The green light blinked faster. That meant the message was sent. Tom opened his own small device and recorded a voice message. "This is Tom. I found an alien girl, injured. I helped her. She helped me. We are not fighting. We want peace." He sent it through a shortwave channel. For a few minutes, nothing happened. The wind blew gently, and birds sang in the trees. Zara began to think no one was listening. Then her signal stone blinked blue. A reply. Zara read the words, "We will come. Do not move." Tom's device beeped too. A voice message played. "We are tracking your signal. A small team is coming." Zara looked at Tom. "They are coming." Tom nodded. Both sides. They packed their things and waited at the edge of the valley near a flat stone field. Zara helped Tom sit comfortably. Then they watched the sky. After an hour, the first ship appeared. It was silent and smooth, made of white metal with green lights, a Nell or scout ship. It landed quietly on the stone. Zara stood up. The ship door opened, and 3 aliens stepped out. One of them wore a long coat with blue symbols. He looked like a commander. He stared at Zara, then at Tom. Zara spoke first. "He saved me. I was hurt. He gave me food, shelter, safety." The commander looked surprised. "But he is human." Zara nodded. "Yes, but he is not like the others. He is different." Tom stood up slowly, holding his leg. He didn't understand the words, but he felt the tension. Zara placed her hand on his arm. "It's okay," she said softly. Before anyone could speak again, another ship came. This time, a human craft. It landed across from the first one. Dust rose into the air. 4 humans stepped out. One of them was a high-ranking officer, wearing a red stripe across his chest. He saw Tom and walked forward. "Tom, are you hurt?" Tom answered, "A little, but I'm fine. This is Zara. She's the one I told you about." The officer looked at Zara, then at the Nell or team. The air between the two groups was full of silence. No one knew what to say. Zara stepped forward. She held up her bandaged arm. "This," she said, pointing to the clean wrap, "is not a weapon. This is care. This is what your soldier gave me." The Nellor commander looked at the bandage. His eyes softened. Tom also stepped forward. He opened his pack and pulled out the small notebook filled with drawings. He showed the pictures of the bridge, the fire, and the joined hands. "These are our words," he said. The human officer took the notebook and looked at it. The Nellor commander did the same. Zara said, We can hate each other forever, or we can build something better. Tom added, we are not soldiers anymore. We are proof that peace can begin. For a long time, no one said anything. Then, the human officer gave a slow nod. I will speak to command. This may not end the war, but it's a start, the Nelor commander said. I will do the same. Both sides stepped back. They looked at each other, not with weapons, but with a small light of understanding. Zara gave Tom a small cloth with a green symbol. This means peace in my language, she said. Tom smiled and gave her a fresh roll of white bandage. Then this will be my gift, he said. A sign of care. Zara wrapped the bandage around her wrist. Tom tied the green cloth to his pack. The two groups returned to their ships. Before leaving, Zara turned to Tom. Thank you, she said. Tom replied, no, thank you. The ships rose into the sky, leaving the valley behind. Zara and Tom had done something powerful. They had sent a message of hope. The sky above the valley was calm. The wind moved gently through the trees, and the grass danced with each soft breeze. The war was not over, but something had changed. A small seed of peace had been planted. Zara walked slowly along a narrow path near the river. She had returned to the valley alone, days after the meeting. Her people had taken her back, listened to her words, and seen her proof. Many were still unsure, but a few had started to believe. The bandage Tom had given her was still wrapped around her wrist. It was clean and white. To others, it looked like cloth. But to her, it meant something more. It was trust. It was hope. It was the moment when everything began to change. She sat on a rock near the water and closed her eyes. She thought about the fire, the cave, the notebook, the bridge drawn in the dirt. She thought about Tom's quiet voice and steady hands. He had never shouted, never forced. He had just been kind. Suddenly, a sound broke her thoughts. Footsteps. She stood up quickly and turned round. It was Tom. He limped slightly, still using the wooden stick to walk, but he was smiling. His clothes were cleaner now, and his face looked less tired. The green cloth she had given him was tied to his arm. Zara smiled and walked toward him. You came, she said. Tom nodded. I wanted to see the valley again. And see you. They sat under the same tree where they had rested before. The river flowed beside them, just like it had that day. But this time, the silence between them was peaceful, not fearful. Tom took out a small bag and handed it to Zara. Inside was the notebook they had drawn in. It now had more pages, filled with new pictures. One drawing showed a group of humans and aliens shaking hands. Another showed children, both human and Nelor, playing near the river. Zara turned the pages slowly, her fingers tracing each line. These are your dreams, she said. Tom smiled. Our dreams. She looked at him. Some people are still afraid. He nodded. I know. On both sides, Zara said. But they saw us. They heard us. It made a difference. Tom pulled something else from his bag. A small flag made of two pieces of cloth stitched together, one side with Earth's colors, the other with the green of Nell or Dot. He held it out to her. We made this at the camp, he said. A new camp, not for war, for talks, for healing. Zara took the flag gently. It's beautiful. Tom looked at the trees. There are still battles out there, but fewer now. Some commanders are calling for pause. Some soldiers are laying down their arms. Zara nodded. And some hearts are opening. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small box. Inside was a soft white stone, round and smooth. It's from my home forest, she said. We give it to those we trust. She placed it in Tom's hand. He held it carefully, like it was something rare and fragile. Thank you, he said. They sat in silence again, watching the sky slowly change as clouds drifted by. A group of birds flew overhead, crossing from one side of the valley to the other. Zara pointed at them. They did not know about war, she said. Tom looked up too. Maybe one day, our people will be the same. Zara took the notebook and opened a fresh page. She handed the pencil to Tom. Draw, she said. Tom thought for a moment, then began to draw a circle with stars around it. Inside the circle, He drew to hands again, but this time he added more hands different sizes. Different shapes all reaching toward the center dot. Zara added a heart in the middle. They both looked at the picture and smiled. That's the future, Zara said. Tom closed the notebook and placed it between them. I never thought I'd be part of something like this, he said. I was just a soldier, Zara replied, and I was just a scout. But we became something more. Tom looked at her. Not heroes, just humans and Nelors. Zara touched her wrist where the bandage still stayed. You saved me. With this? Not with a weapon. With kindness, Tom said, and you saved me. With your belief. The river kept flowing. The sun moved slowly across the sky. In the heart of the valley, where war had once walked, now two lives sat side by side, quiet, hopeful, strong. The bandage on her wrist and the cloth on his arm were not just symbols. They were promises. They were reminders that peace can start. With one hand reaching out, one moment of courage, one act of care, they stayed there until the stars appeared above. Then they walked back along the path, side by side. Their steps slow but steady. The war might return, the world might forget, but in their hearts they knew a different path had begun and they would walk it together.